With me today is a man of stature. He's of physical stature, but also in terms of his courage and his endurance. I had a tremendous response to the first interview I conducted with Chief Nhlanhla Ndiweni. And here he is today to talk about tremendous developments on something that's very close to his heart. Salibonani, Nkosi, Linjani.
Yebo, Jill. Yebo, Linjani. How are you?
I'm very well, and it's wonderful to see you with us. Thank you for giving us your time. I would love you if you would start to just give us an overview of what you've been trying to achieve.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Really, the essence of what I've been trying to achieve, for want of a better word, is a continuation of what those who went before us were trying to achieve with this beautiful land of ours, whereby we've been searching for a roadmap. We've been searching to the answer to this difficult equation of how we settle in that part of Africa and how we make it work.
Yes.
But obviously, as a result of the independence that happened in 1980 and onwards there, things have been lopsided for quite some time. We have seen so many challenges, so many difficulties, that when you try and grasp the problem with Zimbabwe, it is a difficult conundrum to understand. You are looking at a Rubicon cube where you do not know where to start. There are so many issues, so many passionate things. Things have slipped way and way by here and there. The principle which most good governments operate on, i.e. the separation of powers for all the different institutions, whereby each institution holds another institution to account. And so all the other ones fall in line with that, so that there's no overarching, shall we say, a demigod who can stomp around like the elephant in the china shop and demolish everything.
Yes.
So when we are faced with that kind of thing, we then are forced to take a step back, to have a strategic view, to have a helicopter view of this problem. Yeah. And then to ask ourselves the question, how do we resolve that? And for myself, that's precisely what I've been trying to do. That has been my roadmap. And on my journey, I've come up to, which is very strange, and we should have thought about it a long time ago, but obviously with hindsight, yes, it's easy to say that. But we have come right full circle back to say, what is the definition of democracy? Yeah. And if we understand the definition of democracy, all the other cogs that represent democracy fall into place. That is the silver bullet. Yeah. That is the mystery key that I've been chasing after, Jill.
And interestingly, isn't it, that all the way through, right back to Smith's time, the key thing was no independence before majority African vote, effectively.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And how critically important that was then to
Yes.
the Rhodesian government, but with the understanding of how wrong it could go. So with you, the vote has become absolutely paramount.
It is so paramount, Jill, because really that is what defines everything that we are trying to achieve. And to sort of focus in on the vote, then you begin to understand. But for the Zimbabwean situation, the equation is so profound that it really lashes out at you when you start looking at the numbers and start saying, how can we accept an idea, a notion that when it comes to an election, 50% of our constituency is denied the right to vote purely because they live outside the borders of the country. And yet for us, that is really the Achilles heel, because those 50% who are scattered to the four corners of the world have been exposed to all manner of democracies, all manner of governments. So they are well suited to be able to cast a proper vote, a free vote, a vote that will galvanize our nation forward. And yet the incumbent government wants to nullify all of that and to stick purely to those poor souls who it has under the thumb, who cannot do anything, and to say that is our definition of democracy. Myself, I completely.
Am I right in thinking that constitutionally Zimbabwe does allow for an absent vote?
Constitutionally, it does allow for that, although the current government have been trying to chip away at that. Obviously, we've seen numerous constitutional amendments to the Constitution of 2013, which has yet to be implemented and has to be, the constitutional alignment process is going at a snail's pace by design. So we're looking a lot of dubious activities going on to try and water that down. But even on that, Jill, even on the issue of universal suffrage and the complete right to a vote for everyone, this was the placard that the current government was fighting for when it was in the bush. Both Joshua Nkomo, both Robert Mugabe stood up and said, one man, one vote, one woman, one vote. So that was their charge that came through. And then in the mid-1970s, 75, 76 or so, the Lord Pierce Commission came down to Zimbabwe at that time when the Rhodesian government was saying, okay, we are presenting a qualified vote for the African. And on that qualified vote to say, if the African reaches a particular level, they can vote. Mugabe and Nkomo rejected it outright. And there was a fierce fight and lashback to say no conditionality to the principle of vote. And yet here we are, 41 years into independence, conditionality has been pushed in and rammed down our throats just to keep them in power.
Well, now, okay, so now we've elucidated the problem. How are you starting to think that this could be resolved?
I'm beginning to think, Jill, and I've been thinking on this particular chain of thought for quite some time. And I started on the basis that we can identify the problem, and then we can move along and then say, well, what is it that is keeping this problem alive? What is giving this problem breath and fresh air? Why does this problem dissipate, not dissipate? It is like a physician, a doctor, coming over to a patient and saying, why is this chest infection so persistent? And the good physician will begin looking around, even if it means looking at the patient's middle toe. They will do so if they think it has a bearing on that chest ailment. That is what we've been going on. And with the vote, the persistent problem that we have is that we have always given the current government the veto card.
Yes.
Whatever solution we have been looking for, ultimately we always give them the veto card to say, what do you think of that?
Yes.
Will you accept that? Will that do for you? Is that sufficient? And so my starting position, I've said, I will not give the current government that veto card, which means we then look at the diaspora vote on the condition of an independent vote, a vote that does not have the government in charge, a vote that does not have the Zimbabwean Election Commission in charge,
right.
A vote that is entirely at the hands of the Zimbabweans in the whole of the world, being assisted by the international arena in the whole of the world, they giving oversight and principle to the whole matter so that it is a legitimate vote. when we begin doing that, we have made that difference, whereby that particular item that has been keeping the problem there before us has been removed, and we're now going towards that vote that we want in that particular way.
And of course, technology has moved ahead so wonderfully that, I mean, you can buy or interact with anything anywhere in the world. So it would not be hard to verify birth certificates, to verify face recognition, perhaps, to put in passwords. And then when it comes to the day, to actually vote online. Is that what you had in mind?
That's exactly what we have in mind, Jill, whereby we are saying electronic voting has been with us for quite some time. Some of the South American countries have had it for over 20 plus years. There are now different formats of electronic voting. I noted the other day when I was reading some paperwork on this principle, those who are now doing blockchain, i.e. blockchain, whereby you are selling properties in the international arena, in cryptocurrencies and those things. So you're right when you say technology has moved over in leaps and bounds to do that kind of thing. For me, what gives validity to that is what happened or what's happening in Venezuela, whereby the incumbent government is trying to reverse electronic voting in that country, purely because it feels that it will lose the vote. And for them, they're saying it's much easier to rig a vote that's on paper than to rig one that's electronic. So that gives me the kudos and the belief that indeed this system can work, and it's not overtly expensive. It is possible, it can be done. And for us as a Zimbabwean diaspora, because we're so dispersed globally, that is the only practical way we can go.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, I'm bursting with questions I want to ask you about all sorts of the whys and why nots, but let's get to that in a moment. The first thing I would like to say is you've just had a very interesting couple of days talking to various notables in the Lords and the Commons, I believe. Can you give us an overview of how that was received and whether they're jumping with you along the same track, or how did that go?
Yes, indeed, Jill. Yes. No, we are in a very nice place indeed. A very comforting place, a place that really lifts us up. You know, when you've been at the grindstone for a very long time and maybe the spirit was waning a little bit and someone gives that impetus, this is what has happened to that. We began our paper trail by submitting the petition for the diaspora vote to 10 Downing Street here in the United Kingdom. We did that on the 2nd of December, 2021. And lo and behold, within 5 days, we had a response, a positive response. Hence, that positive response led to us having our first meeting with the members of the House of Lords and members of the House of Commons on the 10th of January. And then the following day, another meeting at that. Excellent. It was great purely because we put our cards on the table for those present there. And we started with the overview of saying, we have been trying, all of us have been trying to resolve the Zimbabwean question for 41 years. And everything that we have done to date has failed. Everything that we've done to date has been straight out of the textbook, out of the templates, out of the reference books in all the academic libraries, wherever you want to look for those answers. We have tried all of that, it has failed. And so we began our conversations with them to say, we are bringing to you a solution that is out of the box, completely out of the box.
You didn't go on your own, did you? I mean, your organization went as My Right to Vote, yes. But you also went with some human rights organizations as well?
Indeed, I did. I went with the Zimbabwe Human Rights Organization and then the Restoration of Human Rights in Zimbabwe organization. So we were 3 organizations at the table there. And then they chose me to be their front person, to be their speaker, and to engage with the Lords directly on that. But we've been working very closely indeed with these 3 organizations And even when the climate change conference was there in Glasgow, COP26, we were the ones who once again went to Downing Street and handed in a petition trying to bar the Zimbabwean government attending that climate change conference. We knew it was just procedural what we were doing, purely because the climate change was under the auspices of the United Nations. So the actual barring would not have occurred, but it was a principled matter that we wanted to do. So even when the conference happened in Glasgow, we went up there and joined the drum beating and the shouting and the heckling and all that was there. And we got all the Scots amongst us. They were dressed in their kilts. We were dressed in our Zulu attire. It was a wonderful gathering of a raucous, mad gathering, which completely infuriated our current government.
And I saw pictures of you there. Yes, you looked as though you were having a wonderful time. And am I right in saying ROHR are this extraordinary group who've been demonstrating outside Zimbabwe House every weekend?
They are the ones, Jill. They are the ones. They are really a maverick group in the nicest possible way, whereby they've taken a stand and they've said, it doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter about the weather. It doesn't matter whether we are all fit and well or we're poorly and there's only a few people there. They've taken that upon themselves to say, we will be there until we get this madness sorted out.
They need a medal, every single one of them. They really do.
They do indeed, yes.
And of course, it's timely because this diaspora has been going on generationally now. So you can't leave it very much longer before those who have left, their children, their grandchildren, become of the country to which they've gone and have no wish to return to Zimbabwe.
Indeed, Jill, that is what we have here. And for us, really, it's more a question of understanding the format of the Zimbabwean diaspora.
Yeah.
We are 41 years down the line from independence. And within that 41 years, we have children who we call the born free, who were born after independence. They are also 40 years of age. 40 years of age means they now have families of their own. Some of them have grandchildren of their own. They're settled all over the world. Yeah. Some of their spouses will not be Zimbabweans, will not be from Africa. So as I was talking to some individuals a few days ago, I was saying, when you look at the Zimbabwean diaspora, you must understand that you'll see Zimbabwean diaspora, some of them who are half Chinese, half Indian, half Italian, half French, half whatever you want to call. But for us, it's about saying, yes, we will not be able to get all the Zimbabweans back to Zimbabwe, but there's a benefit here, whereby if they are scattered to the four winds and they still want to be Zimbabwe or have an input in Zimbabwe, that is well and good. They can do it from wherever they are. Would it not be wonderful if we had a Zimbabwean who was in charge of the United Nations? Zimbabwean who was in charge of the World Bank? Would it not be wonderful to have all of those people in those crucial places all over the world? So it is about us co-opting this whole big nation, which is now spread out to 5.5 million plus easily. So that is what we're looking at. We are saying, let's look at the bigger picture and then see how we can understand it.
All right. And of course, they've done awfully well. I mean, I'm always so proud of Zimbabweans because they really, wherever they go, they excel. And it's been incredible to see that. And so that would be a skills base who might easily, on a second generation, say, oh, I'd love to go back for a spell or whatever. Anyway, let's move on. So essentially, you're looking at anybody who's ever lived in Zimbabwe, who was born in Zimbabwe. What is your basic criterion on that?
There, for the Zimbabwean diaspora vote, what we're looking for is, like you're saying, anyone who was born in Zimbabwe, or anyone who lived in Zimbabwe, or anyone who's either in a relationship with a Zimbabwean, has children with Zimbabwean. So we're looking at the broadest extent of even ancestral rights to Zimbabwe, whether by birth or by marriage or by relationship. We are casting the net out as far as wide as possible. And that is achievable. So that really, when we're looking at what has happened to that part of the world, we are saying, even if someone left Zimbabwe in 1965 and they've been away that length of time, they've made a family elsewhere, they're doing various things there, they should be entitled to be able to cast a vote in Zimbabwe to assist that country going forward. Obviously, I know some of the nationalists would be saying, Chief Ndiweni, how can you say certain things like that? But for me, I'm after the knowledge.
Yes.
I'm after the professionalism. For me, Jill, I would like to retire in a country that is functioning well, that has a wonderful health service, that has a very strong judiciary, an independent judiciary, that has a squeaky clean law enforcement agency, whereby I can relax myself and I can just wake up every morning to go and milk my cows and to see how my beasts are doing. That is all that I'm looking for. For those who wish to be politicians and to lead and to do that, it's there for them. But for me, I would like to lay the foundation, the groundstone for all of that to happen, so that really we can say, yes, this is Zimbabwe. And the time when we get a situation whereby we have an immigration service that is working so hard because there are so many people coming back,
yes,
then I'll say we've made it.
Wonderful. Okay, so there's no question that's going to work, but there are huge rocks in the way. One of those huge rocks, of course, is that let's call them the neo-colonialists, who now hold such sway, have very vested interests for seeing the current party in power, and is not going to let go of that lightly. I'm just going to go on to the other one. The other one is the degree of disturbance in the opposition. So the actual situation there now is fluid and is hard to overcome. So are you saying, therefore, you will not look at a local vote at all? And if that's the case, how do you persuade the country that has possibly been overwhelmingly voting the other way to give up power? Right, that'll take you half an hour to finish.
Yes. No, Jill, when I say the Zimbabwean diaspora vote, yes, we're mainly looking at the diaspora vote, but also within that itself, we have said also within Zimbabwe, we will register people from within Zimbabwe itself, purely because we'll be saying we would want to have a huge database. We are building a voter registration database. So that would also assist us in that process. So that even when we are looking at the elections, say for argument's sake, in Kadoma, for example, if we have a lot of people who registered with us in the diaspora from Kadoma, some are in the diaspora, some are in there, that will give us a good picture of what is happening in that particular constituency, so that when ZEC announces whatever it announces, or whatever the government does, it gives us that good picture. We need that information purely because to build up our credibility internationally, because that is all that we're going on if we're going to be doing the engagements that we want to be doing. So we will be touching on that as well. So we will be registering all those people there. Right. With regards to the international arena, and with regard to especially the current government in office, Jonathan Moyo said, good people, do not expect us to reform ourselves out of government. That simple statement says absolutely everything you want to know about the current incumbents in office, that they will not reform themselves out of office. When you come to that full stop, you then have to start thinking outside the box of how then can we do that? How then can we get what we want to get? If I can give you an example, let us say we're now back in 1960 and you would like to bring in a law in the then Rhodesia of banning smoking in a restaurant. That's what you want to do. In your roadmap for doing that, your first call of action is you will go into the civic organizations and try and engage the Rhodesian government to ban smoking in restaurants. You will do that for a number of years, trying to engage, to understand, meetings, all those things. And after possibly 5 or 10 years or so, you'll say, well, obviously, I now get it. They don't want to ban smoking in restaurants. You will then take it to the next step, which is your legal action. You will start going to the High Court, case after case, trying to push them to ban smoking in those restaurants. The government will be robust in its defense and will challenge you and probably win on every score to say, we absolutely refuse the ban on smoking in restaurants. You'll say, I get that. That's another 5 or 10 years that have gone by. So you've done 2 steps, 1 engagement, 2 legal. The next step that you do in trying to get your law into office is you then go international.
Yes.
That is when you go international and you now start going into the international relations, the diplomatic world, all of those other international organizations who can bring pressure to bear on the Rhodesian government to say, please ban smoking in restaurants. And normally that works because that is the highest level you've gone to, and those international arena and powers that be do have a lot of pulleys and levers at their disposal to utilize against the government to ensure that they ban that particular item. They could say during a coffee tea break, oh, by the way, you are landlocked, aren't you? You do survive by bringing fuel in. Oh, what a pity.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, you bring electricity from outside the country. You do rely upon that. Oh, what a pity. By the way, you import all your food and your subsistence. Oh, what a pity. By the way, you import all your medication. Oh, what a pity. There are many levers and pullers that will bring in that law of banning smoking. Hence our agenda of saying that is how we are progressing with the Zimbabwean diaspora vote, whereby we are engaging the international arena to bring pressure to bear on the government, whether they like it or they don't like it. Ultimately, they will concede to that. Yeah. And we have an example already, Jill, at our hands, whereby I remember my father speaking to the ministers, and they came over and they were saying, well, okay, yes, we are going to take farms over by force. And the old man said, you can't do that. Ultimately, you will have to pay. Ultimately, you will have to come to the table. Ultimately, you will have to sit down with the people you've taken farms from and come to an understanding. And obviously, they threw that out of the window and said, well, no, we are the government. We'll do it. We don't care what the world does. And they did it. But lo and behold, in the last 2 to 3 years, they've had to come to the table. Lo and behold, they've had to look for money left, right, and center. Lo and behold, in order to go back into the brotherhood and sisterhood of nations, they've had to come back to square one. Square one, what the old man was saying, that you cannot do certain things. And so that is the experience that we are bringing here for us, to say that we know we will get the diaspora vote. That is 100% certain. It is about what to utilize to get that to happen. So that's the answer to your question of saying what you do if the government does not agree. We already understand that it doesn't agree. We are well aware that it is very averse to that idea. So we are using what we have at our disposal, which we know.
And I'm quite sure you will agree with me, a man of stature and of courage. And we wish him well in everything he's doing at this moment and getting massive international support. Part 2 of our discussion will be up on Friday next week, and I do hope you'll join us then.